AI is reshaping the risk reward equation. I see AI accelerating both innovation and threat sophistication.
Clients are very, very concerned about how do I identify a complete attack surface given all of the changes in my infrastructure.
Their businesses have evolved dramatically over the last few years. We see 31 billion attacks a day.
Good morning, afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's executive interview on cybersecurity reimagined for modern infrastructure, leading through AI and talent transformation. I'm Bhaskar Bhattacharya from Wipro, and I'm delighted to host this conversation. Today, we are joined by our expert panel, Tony Bafomante, Senior Vice President and Global Head of Cybersecurity and Risk Services at Wipro, and Karim Temsamani, President of Next Generation Security at Palo Alto Networks, along with our moderator, Abhijit Kumar, Vice President of Engineering and Information Technology at Everest Group. Abhijit, I'll turn it over to you to begin the executive session. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bhaskar, for passing the baton. I shall be picking up from here to take the discussion ahead with the group. For starters, today's topic couldn't be timely. A lot has transpired in the last 2 years in modern infrastructure. In the past, where it was more about enterprise outcome of economy, efficiency, and effectiveness, primarily driven by cloud connectivity, unified networking, and edge connectivity, now we see modern infrastructure shifting towards being more distributed, embracing cloud-native architecture, and being AI-enabled, which is primarily, reshaping the cybersecurity practices, and they are evolving primarily from an AI adoption and talent transformation perspective, which is the main meat of our discussion today. So let me kick things off with you, Kareem, by grounding ourselves in the reality of infrastructure evolution, which has happened. From your vantage point, how has modern infrastructure evolved, and how does that impact the threat landscape? What shifts are you seeing in the technology world that security leaders should care about?
Thank you very much for having me on the podcast, and thank you for the question. I talk to customers every single day, and there are clearly 2 points that really resonate to them and that really worry them when they think about the state of their infrastructure. The first one is that their businesses have evolved dramatically over the last few years. Most of our customers have continued to grow, they've acquired companies, they've launched new products. And the result of that is that the state of the infrastructure is very much in a state of disarray. It's become very, very difficult and complex to manage because as they've grown, they basically have had to cope with changes in the infrastructure, which means that they have often a very large number of security tools and security vendors. So, in a survey that we've done, we basically saw that most of our customers have over 80 security tools from 20 different vendors. And often these tools are not working very well with each other. Now, our customers did not have the ability over time to essentially have platforms that enable all the security tools to work well with one another. And therefore, all of these decisions that they've made a ton of sense, but it's creating this complexity and it's creating a problem in the sense that every time they have a new product to launch, or they're acquiring a new company, or they're launching a new market, now they have a whole infrastructure project in front of them. And it's become really tremendously difficult to manage that from a security perspective. They need to think about where they're putting their policy, where they're consistently applying security, and they have a patchwork of solutions. The second problem that really comes up when I talk to customers is really this shift to the cloud. Now, obviously, every single organization has moved to some degree to the cloud. Many organizations I talk to have moved 100% to the cloud. We're all using multiple devices on a daily basis. Most of you on the podcast probably have multiple cell phones. We're using laptops, iPads. We have IoT devices everywhere in the environments. But the reality is that as we use the cloud, we know that most of the attacks originate from the cloud. Over 80% of the attacks are actually coming from the cloud. And to access the cloud, we're using browsers, and browsers are not secure. A lot of the attacks are essentially coming from the browser, and a lot of the traffic coming from the browser is often encrypted. So it's very hard to see without a secure browser what's really happening. So in this new world where the data is not residing in an enterprise, where all the networks are not essentially within the four walls of the company, the security problems that are coming in the vast areas that companies have to protect is growing larger by the day. And therefore, companies are getting very, very worried about the overall management of their infrastructure.
All right, I think Karim, you drive the point home. Definitely, cloud has been increasing the attack surface for most enterprises, and as well as the businesses as they grow and expand, acquire other companies. The infra has been all over the place with now, cloud native adoption, AI-led threats, and identities, which are also getting fragmented. I think it definitely requires a rethinking of how we just think about the perimeter. You talked about how this is not behind the network or specific castles anymore. I think the perimeter, it must travel with workload, users, and data out there, so that continuous security is important. Moving on, I think as we build on this particular modern infrastructure story, Tony, how are your enterprise client aligning their cybersecurity strategies with these infrastructure shifts and transformation which have happened in the past couple of years, especially when it comes to multi-cloud and hybrid cloud security? How are they ensuring visibility, control, proactive risk management? And last but not the least, and how are end-to-end proactive security models playing into the transformation narrative?
Yeah, thanks, Avijit. Appreciate being here as well. And I tell you, the complexity that Karim just mentioned is something our clients struggle with each and every day. And I think it starts with what you mentioned around attack surface, right? First of all, the clients are very, very concerned about how do I identify a complete attack surface given all of the changes in my infrastructure, given how distributed things are today, whether it's users, contractors, business, third parties, connections, et cetera. So I think that's a massive part of the strategy is one, looking at and identifying and evaluating that attack surface. I think secondly, from there, it's all about trying to identify how do I unify my control set and then identify what not only cloud environments, but also the tools and techniques and processes that I use, how do they match up against those? And, I think, the piece around the multiple tools in the environments, I mean, we've seen this massive proliferation, over time. And there's not only gaps in security strategies and infrastructures, but there's also overlaps. And that's not a good thing either, from a cost perspective, whether it's, operating expenses or the capital expenditures and things like that. So we're seeing this shift in strategy to unifying the control structure, aligning the tool sets and the cloud environments, whether those are native controls or additional things that we bring in to the organization. We're seeing that normalization occur, which I think is key for clients to be able to manage this in a little bit more effective and efficient way. And so ultimately, where this is going is how do I then leverage technologies like AI to not only monitor that control structure, but then also to identify where I can do self-heal, self-help, right? And that's not going to happen across the entire estate, and that's fine, right? But the ability for organizations to look at their suite of capabilities in their security toolbox, if you will, and figure out where they're comfortable turning on some of the continuous monitoring where they can gather that data from telemetry from systems and be able to act on that data and then feed that back into their, whether audit, compliance, or security systems is super, super critical these days. I mean, it's all about for us trying to identify how do we make sure that that attack surface is managed. We're able to make sure we're identifying not only compliance requirements, but importantly, the security and risk requirements, and then being able to monitor them and manage them much, much faster than we ever have, and close that loop from an automation perspective to not only think about identifying those threats, but acting on the remediation as well.
All right, I think both Kareem and Tony. What do I hear from both of you is that in most enterprises are on legacy tools, and there's a huge overlap of this particular tool, and their modernization journey definitely starts by consolidation, starts by having more AI driven telemetry out there, thinking about how do they ensure greater visibility, control, and resiliency across different cloud environments as well as their infrastructure stack.